The day Kathleen Sullivan's screams echoed through the ramshackle cabin nestled in the rugged Montana territory of 1878, she knew her life would never be the same. Blood soaked the birthing sheets beneath her as she held the tiny infant to her chest, the little girl's cries barely audible over the approaching footsteps of her husband. A girl. Jeremiah Sullivan's voice was eerily quiet as he stood in the doorway, his shadow casting darkness over the bed where Kathleen lay exhausted. "She's beautiful," Kathleen whispered, trying to smile through her fear. "Look at her little fingers, Jeremiah." Perfect, just like the first blow caught her across the cheek, sending her head snapping sideways. The midwife gasped and backed away, clutching her bag to her chest. "I told you to give me a son," Jeremiah roared, his fist raised again. 3 years of marriage and nothing but this. "This useless girl," Kathleen curled around her daughter, shielding the infant with her body as her husband's rage rained down upon her shoulders and back. The midwife fled, too frightened to intervene, her retreating footsteps drowned out by Jeremiah's curses and Kathleen's sobs. 2 days later, with bruises blooming across her skin like violent flowers, Kathleen named her daughter Hope. It was the one thing she clung to when Jeremiah's drinking turned him mean, which happened with increasing frequency. Each day, she whispered promises into her daughter's tiny ear that someday, somehow they would find a better life. The opportunity came one stormy autumn evening when Jeremiah, in a drunken stupor, rode off to the saloon in town and didn't return. By morning, with Hope clutched to her breast, Kathleen packed what few belongings she could carry and slipped away from the cabin that had become her prison. She walked for miles, the Montana wilderness stretching endlessly before her, until her legs trembled and her milk began to dry up from exhaustion and fear. When she spotted smoke rising from a distant homestead as the sun began to set, Kathleen gathered her last reserves of strength and staggered toward it. The Morgan Creek Ranch stood proudly against the backdrop of the mountains, its sturdy fences and well-kept buildings a testament to careful stewardship. Owen Dawson wiped sweat from his brow as he hammered the last fence post into place, satisfaction filling him at a day's work well done. At 32, he had built this ranch from nothing, turning wilderness into a respectable cattle operation through sheer determination and backbreaking labor. The sight of a woman stumbling toward his property, clutching something to her chest, sent him dropping his hammer and running. He reached her just as her knees buckled. "Madam, madam, can you hear me?" His voice was deep but gentle as he caught her before she hit the ground. Kathleen's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of summer sage. "My baby," she whispered. "Please help my baby." Owen glanced down at the bundle in her arms, a tiny face peeking out from the threadbare blanket. "I've got you both," he assured her, carefully lifting mother and child into his arms. "You're safe now." The weight of those words, "you're safe," now brought tears to Kathleen's eyes as darkness claimed her. When she awoke, she was lying in a clean bed, her daughter sleeping peacefully beside her in a makeshift cradle fashioned from a drawer. The room was simple but comfortable, with a patchwork quilt covering her and the scent of something savory wafting through the air. "You're awake," came a voice from the doorway. The tall cowboy she vaguely remembered from before stood there, holding a tray. "I brought some broth and bread." "Figured you'd need your strength." Kathleen instinctively pulled the quilt higher, her eyes darting around the room. "Where am I?" "Morgan Creek Ranch. I'm Owen Dawson, the owner." He set the tray down on a small table near the bed. "Your little one's been sleeping pretty soundly." "Must take after her mama. You've been out nearly 15 hours. Panic seized Kathleen. 15 hours, but she tried to sit up and winced as pain shot through her body. "Easy now," Owen cautioned, his brow furrowing with concern. "You're pretty banged up." "Those bruises didn't come from falling, did they?" Shame colored Kathleen's cheeks as she looked away. "My husband," she whispered. He wanted a son." Owen's jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle. "Well, I think that little girl of yours is worth more than her weight in gold." He nodded toward the cradle. "What's her name?" "Hope," Kathleen replied, her voice cracking. "I named her Hope." "Fitting," Owen said with a small smile. "Now you need to eat and rest. We can talk more when you're stronger." Over the next few days, Kathleen regained her strength while Owen kept his distance, respecting her space but ensuring she had everything she needed. His housekeeper, an older woman named Martha, helped care for Hope and tended to Kathleen's healing bruises with herbal compresses. A week after her arrival, Kathleen found Owen sitting on the porch whittling a small wooden horse by lantern light. "May I join you?" she asked hesitantly. He nodded, setting aside his work. "How are you feeling?" "Better." Kathleen sat down on a nearby chair, adjusting the shawl Martha had loaned her. "Mr. Dawson, I can't stay here much longer. I've imposed on your kindness too long already." Owen looked at her thoughtfully. "Where will you go?" The question hung in the air between them. Kathleen had no answer. "Your husband," Owen began carefully, "is he looking for you?" Kathleen's hands trembled slightly. "I don't know, maybe he might think we died out there, or he might not care enough to look. And if he does look, then we'll keep running." Determination hardened her voice. Owen was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Sullivan, I run this ranch alone except for a couple of hands who help with the cattle. Martha comes from town 3 days a week to keep the house, but she's getting on in years." He cleared his throat. "I could use someone to help full-time with the cooking and housekeeping. The position comes with room and board for you and your daughter." Hope's cry filtered through the open window, and Kathleen rose instinctively. "I should check on her." "Think about it," Owen said simply. "No rush." That night, as Kathleen nursed Hope in the quiet darkness, she contemplated Owen's offer. It seemed too good to be true, a safe place for her and Hope, honest work, distance from Jeremiah. But what if her husband tracked them down? What if she was putting this kind cowboy in danger? Morning brought clarity. Kathleen found Owen in the barn, brushing down his stallion. "I'll accept your offer, Mr. Dawson," she said, Hope nestled against her shoulder. "But only if you understand that my husband might come looking. I don't want to bring trouble to your door." Owen's hand stilled on the horse's flank. "Mrs. Sullivan, I've faced down rustlers, blizzards, and a grizzly once. I'm not afraid of a man who beats women and hates babies." His eyes met hers steadily. "And if he does show up, he'll find that Montana men have our own ideas about how to treat mothers and children." The weeks turned to months, and Kathleen fell into a rhythm at Morgan Creek Ranch. She cooked hearty meals, kept the house spotless, and slowly, the haunted look in her eyes began to fade. Hope grew plump and happy, cooing at the chickens Kathleen fed each morning and watching with fascination as Owen worked around the ranch. For his part, Owen found himself lingering at mealtimes, making excuses to be near the house during the day, and carving small toys for Hope that delighted the growing infant. He kept his distance, never wanting Kathleen to feel pressured or uncomfortable, but his feelings grew like spring grass after the snow melt, unstoppable and vibrant. When winter descended on the mountains, the ranch became a snowy island surrounded by wilderness. Christmas approached, and Owen surprised Kathleen with a small pine tree he dragged into the house one evening. "Hope should have her first Christmas properly," he explained somewhat sheepishly as he set it up in the corner of the main room. Kathleen's eyes filled with tears. "My parents always had a tree," she said softly. "I never thought I'd have one again." That night, they decorated the tree with strings of dried berries, paper stars, and a few precious glass ornaments Owen produced from a dusty box. Hope watched from her blanket on the floor, her eyes wide with wonder at the candles Owen carefully lit on the branches. "I've never seen anything so beautiful," Kathleen whispered. Owen looked at her, the candlelight dancing across her face. "I have." Their eyes met for a long moment before Kathleen looked away, her cheeks flushing. The day before Christmas, a blizzard roared down from the mountains, confining them to the house. Owen stoked the fires high while Kathleen baked bread and made a stew with the last of the autumn vegetables. After dinner, they sat by the hearth, Hope sleeping peacefully in the cradle Owen had crafted for her. "Tell me about your life before," Owen said quietly. "If you want to, that is." Kathleen was silent for so long that he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she began to speak, her voice soft but steady. "I grew up in Pennsylvania. My father was a schoolteacher. We weren't rich, but we were happy." She traced a pattern on her skirt. "When he died of pneumonia, Mother and I couldn't keep the house." We moved west with a church group, hoping to start over. She paused, watching the flames dance. That's where I met Jeremiah. He was charming at first, full of big dreams about land and cattle. Mother didn't trust him, but I was young and thought I knew better. A bitter smile touched her lips. We married a week after my 18th birthday. Mother died a month later, never knowing how right she'd been. I'm sorry, Owen said sincerely. Kathleen nodded. Jeremiah changed as soon as we were alone. Nothing I did was right. The house wasn't clean enough, the bread wasn't light enough, I wasn't giving him a son. She glanced at Hope. When I finally got with child, he was so sure it would be a boy, he'd already picked out names, bought a tiny hat and boots. And when Hope arrived, he went mad with rage. Said I'd failed him on purpose. Kathleen's voice quavered. He'd hit me before, but never like that. I thought he might kill us both. Owen's hand clenched into a fist. Some men don't deserve the air they breathe. What about you? Kathleen asked, clearly wanting to change the subject. How did you end up here all alone? Owen's expression softened. Came west after the war, served with the Union, saw things no man should see. Afterward, I couldn't settle back into regular life. The open country called to me. He gestured around them. Built this place log by log. Never found the right woman to share it with, though plenty in town have tried to change my bachelor ways. No one caught your eye? Kathleen asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Owen's gaze was steady. Not until recently. The blizzard howled outside, but inside, something warm and fragile bloomed between them. Spring came to Montana with a rush of wildflowers and new calves. Hope took her first tottering steps across the kitchen floor, falling into Owen's waiting arms as he knelt with outstretched hands, his face alight with a joy that made Kathleen's heart ache with tenderness. They'd settled into a comfortable familiarity over the winter months, but neither had spoken of the feelings growing between them. Kathleen was still legally married, still looking over her shoulder whenever she went into town with Owen, scanning faces for Jeremiah's angry countenance. One crisp April morning, Owen rode into town alone and returned with a letter. He found Kathleen hanging laundry, Hope playing with a wooden duck at her feet. This came for you, he said, holding out an envelope. From the territorial marshal's office. Kathleen's hands trembled as she took it. How did they know where to find me? I asked them to contact me if they ever got news, Owen admitted. About Jeremiah, she opened the letter slowly, reading the formal language with growing disbelief. He's dead, she whispered finally. Killed in a bar fight in Helena 3 months ago. She looked up at Owen, her expression a complex mixture of relief, shock, and something like guilt. I'm free. That night, after Hope was asleep, Owen and Kathleen sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. The weight of the day's news hung between them, altering everything yet changing nothing about how they felt. What will you do now? Owen asked, his voice carefully neutral. Kathleen looked at him in surprise. You're free, he reminded her gently. You could go anywhere, start over. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Owen Dawson, are you trying to get rid of me? A small smile tugged at his lips. Just making sure you know you have choices. Kathleen's gaze drifted across the ranch, the garden she'd planted, the chicken coop she'd rebuilt, the house that had become a true home. My choice is right here, she said softly, if you want us to stay. Owen reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. Kathleen, I've wanted you to stay since the moment you opened your eyes in my guest room. He took a deep breath. I know it's too soon after everything you've been through, but someday, when you're ready, I'd like to ask you a question about making this arrangement more permanent. Tears glimmered in Kathleen's eyes as she squeezed his hand. I think when that day comes, you'll like my answer. Summer brought long, golden days filled with ranch work and moments of unexpected joy. Owen taught Hope to feed the chickens, her delighted giggles filling the air when they pecked gently from her tiny palm. Kathleen expanded the garden, putting up preserves for the coming winter and learning to ride the gentle mare Owen had trained specially for her. The territorial judge visited Morgan Creek in July, staying overnight on his circuit through the isolated ranches and settlements. After dinner, when Hope was asleep, Owen approached him with a question about how long a widow needed to wait before remarrying. Technically, the law suggests a year of mourning, the judge said, sipping the coffee Kathleen had served. But out here in the territories, practicality often outweighs convention. His shrewd eyes moved between Owen and Kathleen. Especially when there's a child involved who needs a proper father. 2 weeks later, on a perfect summer evening with the mountains glowing purple in the setting sun, Owen took Kathleen's hand as they walked along the creek that gave the ranch its name. "I've been thinking," he began, uncharacteristically nervous. Kathleen smiled. "A dangerous pastime, indeed." He stopped, turning to face her. "Kathleen, when you and Hope came into my life, this place stopped being just a ranch and became a home. You filled it with laughter and warmth and all the things I never knew I was missing." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small gold band. "I'm not an eloquent man, but I love you both more than I thought possible. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Kathleen's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They were married in August, a simple ceremony in the yard of Morgan Creek Ranch with Hope toddling between them carrying wildflowers, the territorial judge officiating, and neighbors from miles around bringing food and good wishes. Kathleen wore a new blue dress that Martha had helped her sew, and Owen looked uncommonly handsome in a proper suit ordered from the catalog. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her with such tenderness that several of the ranch wives dabbed at their eyes. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with fiddle music and dancing under lantern light. As the last guests departed, Owen carried a sleeping Hope to her bed, tucking her in with the gentle touch that had won Kathleen's heart. When he returned to their bedroom now, not just his Kathleen was standing by the window in her nightdress, looking out at the starlit ranch. "Having second thoughts, Mrs. Dawson?" he asked softly. She turned to him with a radiant smile. "Only wondering how I got so lucky. A year ago, I thought my life was over. Now I have everything I ever dreamed of." Owen crossed the room and took her in his arms. "You deserved so much better than what life gave you. I promise to spend every day making sure you and Hope never know fear or want again." "I know you will," she whispered against his chest. "You're the best man I've ever known." Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Kathleen's head resting on Owen's shoulder, he traced patterns on her back and told her about his dreams for their future expanding the ranch, perhaps adding a few more rooms to the house, watching Hope grow up strong and confident. "And maybe," he added hesitantly, "giving her a brother or sister someday, if you wanted." Kathleen rose up on one elbow to look at him in the moonlight. "I'd like that very much," she said softly. "A whole house full of little Dawsons running around." The years that followed were kind to the Dawsons of Morgan Creek Ranch. Hope grew into a spirited young girl with her mother's green eyes and a fearless approach to life that both delighted and terrified her parents. She was joined by a brother, Daniel, when she was 3, and twin sisters, Emma and Elizabeth, 2 years after that. Owen expanded the ranch, adding more cattle and horses, building a larger house to accommodate their growing family. Kathleen planted an orchard and started a small school in town, teaching the children of neighboring ranches alongside her own. On Hope's 5th birthday, as they watched her proudly showing her siblings how to pet the new foal in the barn, Owen slipped his arm around Kathleen's waist. "Remember that first day when you showed up half dead on my doorstep?" he asked quietly. Kathleen nodded, leaning into his embrace. "How could I forget? I told you then that little girl was worth more than gold." He kissed her temple. "Best assessment I ever made." "You saved us," Kathleen said simply. Owen shook his head. "No, my love, you saved yourself by having the courage to leave. I was just lucky enough to be in the right place when you did." In the warm Montana sunshine, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Kathleen knew they were both right. She had found the strength to flee a monster, and Owen had shown her that love didn't have to hurt. Together, they had created something precious and rare, a family built on respect, kindness, and unwavering love. That evening, after the children were asleep, Kathleen found Owen on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. She handed him a cup of coffee and settled beside him on the bench he'd built their first summer together. "I was thinking about names today," she said casually. Owen raised an eyebrow. Names, she took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. For number 5. His eyes widened, then crinkled with joy as he pulled her close. Kathleen Dawson, you are a wonder. So are you, Cowboy, she whispered, kissing him as the last rays of sunlight bathed Morgan Creek Ranch in golden light. So are you.